Welcome to Carry the Mat, where we pursue meaning in life, legacy, and leadership. Join us as we seek to learn some of life's most difficult yet valuable hard-earned lessons from men and women who have experienced obstacles and victories firsthand, striving to serve one another based on our unique, God-given abilities, not interested in merely talking about it, but determined to be about it. If that sounds like you, then let's carry the mat together. Every man dies, but not every man truly lives. Now to your hosts, Ben Brandenburg and Daniel Moss. This is Carry the Mat.
Can I pray for us real quick?
That'd be great, man.
Cool. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you that you are such a good God and a gracious Heavenly Father. Thank you for your Son, Jesus. Thank you for redeeming grace. Thank you that you are just perfect in everything that you do. God, I just want to give over this next time to you, Lord. What an awesome time to be able to just chat and catch up with BB and talk about life, talk about the places you've called us, Lord. And more than anything, God, for this time, I pray that you are glorified. God, may our thoughts and our words be honoring to you. God, I pray for the people that this message is going to touch. Lord, and thank you for trusting us with the calling you've put us on. We love you. I'm sure and pray. Amen.
All right, well, we'll jump right in. Welcome back by popular demand.
I don't know about that.
Jarryd Wallace is here with us on Carry the Mat. And first off, I just want to say shout out to Cat Hires for helping us out today.
Woo-woo.
Man, this is a big time. You know, we're here at lovely Grace Studios, and
the HQ. Come on, baby.
Yeah. So you were asking me what we should put on the wall, and I fully embrace the pink and the flowers, but I said you could bring a American flag or one of your sponsors, a big Team Toyota flag, whatever. But this is what we're rolling with today.
We're gonna go with it, man.
Yeah.
I think it's a good vibe. You know, we don't want to rip off the beautiful wallpaper off the wall, so this is just where we're gonna stay.
I'm blown away with the building. This is a really cool space over here.
Pretty amazing setup. Yeah, she's done pretty awesome job building a social media empire, but you don't get to see the behind the scenes work and getting to kind of be here in-house today. You get to see a little bit of how the magic happens. And
I mean, it's got to be interesting for Coach Wallace, right? I mean, he thinks he's the most popular guy in the family, and then you go win gold medals and stuff. You're like, maybe I'm the most popular guy in the family. And then there's Brittany, who's definitely the most popular.
Hands down.
And I met your mom. She actually is the coolest one in the family. So.
And she knows it too.
Yeah,
she knows
so
it. She
cool.
stays behind the scenes and just lets people experience her awesomeness when the time comes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. I remember there's such a clear transition where I was Coach Wallace's son, and then I was basically Jarryd. I was who I was for 2 years, right? And then you're Lovely Gray's brother. So there's been a genealogy here in town, and Dad kind of says the same thing. I was Coach Wallace, everybody knew me, and it was like, you're Jarrod's dad, and then now you're Brittany's dad. So
that's great.
Yeah,
what's y'all's age difference again?
We're 20 months apart from each other.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's less than 2 years and
Who's
1 year in
who's
school.
older?
She's older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question.
Yeah. And y'all went to Oconee, right?
Yeah. Local. I mean, we're one of the fortunate, I think, kids of a collegiate coach where Dad was able to stay at one university for 38 years through his career.
Man,
and
that's
so
really cool.
we never had to move.
Yeah.
School. We moved schools in the area, but we never moved.
Now, was North Oconee there at the time? I'm trying to think of when that was.
Brittany would have been the first class out of North Oconee. So
Gotcha.
we went to Oconee, but it was just being, kind of launching when we were moving over to school there. Actually, her first 2 years of high school, if we would have been in North Oconee, would have been at Oconee, and then she would have transitioned over. But we were sectioned for the Oconee area.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's so interesting coming up. I mean, I live over there, obviously, but coming from over there to this part of town is really cool. I didn't even know this stuff was back here. I mean, it's the old industrial mill district, I guess, of Athens.
Yeah.
It's kind of normal town, quirky vibes. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
part
different.
of Athens that
it's
10, 20 years ago, no one really wanted to come over here, and now it's kind of becoming this hot spot.
Yeah, doing some real cool spaces, all this new industrial vibe stuff, and we stayed in an Airbnb off Boulevard.
Come
on,
and
we're doing some housework right now, which everyone has their take on doing that. It's tough, we had to get out for over a month, but we stayed at a few Airbnbs. my wife loved 5 Points, and Normal Town, obviously, but we were 5 Points for a little while, then Normal Town, then back in Oconee for 3-4 different weeks. And
what was your favorite of the three?
The Oconee, it was similar routine for us.
Yeah.
And for the accessibility, that was probably the easiest one, the one out in Oconee.
Yeah.
But man, it's growing. It's probably interesting for you to see it from back when it was what you called God's country,
yeah, man,
to now, and all the new road work and all the growth. It's just got to be different.
Well, Epps Bridge didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even when I was in high school, like it was kind of becoming a spot, and it was really just Walmart and Kroger. And so, thinking back from, before, 15 to 18 years before that, I mean, there was nothing between Atlanta and Athens, and now kind of Oconee is starting to, build a community and grow. I mean, when we went to high school out there, and we lived out in Oconee for 5 years, I mean, it was cow pastures. We were one of the only newer kind of ish neighborhoods, and for the most part, it was cow pastures. And now it's crazy how much they're expanding and growing. So it's in some sense it's kind of cool, but you miss your small little quiet town that you grew up in and once knew.
I bet. Yeah. So catch us up a little bit on. So last time we talked to you, I want to say you were transitioning kind of events. Going through some blade changes.
Yeah.
And getting ready with the triple jump. What was it? Long jump.
Long jump.
So kind of take us through the train. Well, first off, catch us up in your family, but then take us through the training, what training looks like, the day-to-day and all that.
Yeah, from a family standpoint, Levi's 4 now, and Colton's about 16 months. So I think Colton was probably, 4 months maybe last time we talked, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger. But so it's kind of crazy to just 1 year blinks, and it's just, wow, here we are. But family's doing great. It's an interesting year being in an Olympic year. Things are all hands on deck when it comes to the amount of meets that I'm competing in. Training camps are very rampant this year, so having to lean on Leah, my wife, a good bit to kind of manage things at the house, which is very grateful for her in that regard. But it's also tough too. Took little man to school this morning, and it's the last time I'm gonna see him for 10 days, and just saying, hey man, I miss you. Like, Daddy doesn't like going. I was like, can I tell you a secret? Daddy doesn't like going on work trips, anymore, because I miss you, and it's tough. But you need you to listen to your mom, the whole slew. But it's one of those things that obviously it's bittersweet when you leave, but then when you come back, it's awesome as well. So, but it's one of those years where every 4 years you got to focus up and dial in and kind of put it all out there to hopefully end up on the podium. As you said, and you kind of switched events, right? Yeah. So last year was my first year kind of focusing more on long jump than the 100. I was kind of doing both throughout the year, and then after nationals really decided that I think long jump was going to be my best opportunity to get on the podium in Paris. And so in the midst of that transition, there was a lot of fun things happening. When you're learning a new event or learning anything new, your acceleration curve's very, very steep. It's very, every day at practice, I'm applying something new, I'm learning something new, I'm seeing an improvement. Where I would say, after 10 or 12 years of being a sprinter, the learning curve's, flat, or sometimes you go downhill a little bit before you go back uphill. So, man, it has really been a fun year of growth, and I would say I've almost like re-fallen in love with track and field in a sense, in the sport. It's kind of re-energized me. I think after Tokyo, I was a little tired and wanted to endure through Paris, but I was getting flat. I was kind of burnt out a little bit, and I look at this kind of change of events as a blessing in disguise, because it's man, it really has. It's energized me. I'm having so much fun every day at practice. I'm learning a ton, and I think that there's a lot more for me to learn, and that's exciting too from a performance metric standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I open up my season next weekend, and we'll get to kind of see where things are from a baseline, and then hopefully we'll just keep climbing from there. Yeah, you mentioned I know last time you mentioned the different blades. You had busted a blade, I think, in practice maybe. Have you ever busted anything in the competition? Thankfully not. No, a lot. Some of the blades that I test in practice are really probably shouldn't be jumped on, but in order to get perfectly dialed in, you kind of have to take the risk. I did bust up 2 more since that time we talked, and so it was not a comfortable learning experience. Thankfully, when I busted, I landed in sand because there's a long jump, or there's a pit there at the end of the runway, which is kind of nice. But it's thankfully no more. I don't think we're going to have any more broken legs. We've kind of honed in on where we're going to focus the technology. We're waiting on one more piece of the puzzle to arrive. It should be here in the next week or 2, and then we'll be locked in and have everything we need to just focus on training. And that's the nice part, right? I mean, when you're juggling these very different variables, in some senses, an able-bodied athlete, it's just training protocols, and periodization processes and nutrition. Well, when you throw, adaptive equipment into that variable, a lot can change, and one little adjustment can change your whole entire, next cycle potentially. And so, that variability and the uncertainty that comes, is this the right change? Is it the wrong change? Is kind of tough to manage sometimes, but I'm very much looking forward to having what we need and just being able to focus 100% on the training.
Yeah. I mean, even today, I parked in the wrong spot and you come out on the road, like you would never know that one, you have a prosthetic on, but 2, you mentioned like when you're just playing in the yard with your kids, you have kind of your default attachment. You know what I mean? Well, explain to us again.
Yeah.
You've got your racing blades that are totally different. And, if you don't follow it, you would just never know. Okay, your blade on track on meet day is totally different from what you're wearing today. But is that your go-to, attachment when you're just doing normal stuff that you've got on right now?
Dude, the prosthetic industry is crazy. And, there's always a medical advancement in some capacity with every war that we see. And this most recent war has really driven prosthetic innovation. And we went from probably having only like 100 feet, which is still a large number of feet in the industry, to probably 275 different feet to choose from. And so, it's crazy how many specific feet are designed for specific activities. And, I'm fortunate I've got my Old Faithful, the everyday leg that I use probably 90% of the time. But yeah, if I'm wanting to chase a little man in the yard or be a little bit more active, or, play, Frisbee with buddies, whatever it is that just requires a little bit more movement, or if Dad's challenged me some pickleball and I, need to be able to move on the court a little bit more, I've got a little bit more adaptive leg that, isn't quite as much as the running blade, but I can still put a shoe on and be a little more functional from that standpoint. And then obviously the sprinting and jumping blades are so specific. Like, I would not want to drive a vehicle with those on. I would not want to walk anywhere with those on.
You scratch your hardwoods, right?
Yeah, I mean, just for real, bro, for real. So so it's one of those things that grateful that there's so much specificity in the marketplace, but it is unique in nature to have I guess different legs for different things.
Well, I think it's just a testament to the way you've handled adversity, but the fact that when you got injured back in high school, you could have easily made that part of your identity, in the sense of that becoming what would you be viewed as a negative, but you've turned it, and it's become a positive aspect because of the way you handle it. It's become for God's glory, the way you've used it as a platform, the way you've honored Him, and I think it's become. I don't look at you and think about that, but it's only attributed. It's only a strength. I view it as a strength. But I know that didn't just come natural. I know it. Like, talk about mentally. I guess you're unique because you're a positive dude by nature. I think you're an upbeat, kind of extroverted or positive guy. At least that's the way I interpret it. But when you were going through it, was there a point to where you? When did you start to realize that, hey, this can become, if I embrace this the right way, this could be a positive in the sense of, one, from a competition standpoint, but 2, just in my everyday life, this could become something that God can use as a strength in my story.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. I think probably a lot later than what most people would assume, or maybe even want to know. Candidly, it was hard, man. 17, I kind of had my life figured out. I was going to run at Georgia, follow my parents' footsteps as a collegiate athlete. I was kind of living the dream. I had all the kind of goals and aspirations kind of listed out, and, wake up the next morning and my whole life got flipped on its head, at least the life that I thought I was supposed to live at 17 years old. And, I started off, I was as strong as I could be, I definitely was leaning into the Lord and my faith early on, and kind of like, hey, we're going to get through this. Like, let's go, and the longer time passed and the more reality hit, the harder it got, to endure, to be strong, and to be the person I think people wanted you to be or expect you to be. And I didn't want to disappoint anybody, but like I was hurting, man, and I didn't feel like I don't know. I just didn't feel like I could be really honest with where I was at, because I didn't want to let anybody down. And, yeah, so it was about 18 months, maybe 2 years of that. Looking back, I got really good at like having two different personalities, like kind of, two different people depending on who I was around. And I had my friends who, didn't really know the pain I was in, but I was just kind of like partying with, or kind of like living a lifestyle that was just allowing me to kind of hide behind the pain. And then I had, family and church and friends, and, that I was just being kind of fake with at times, right? Where it's just like, oh, everything's great. Oh, I'm crushing. God's good. Everything's amazing. And yeah, at the core, I mean, God is good, man. And I knew that. But I was upset. I was angry. I didn't, why me, whatever, right? And so, I think that there was a necessary period of time for me to feel that and understand that. I think where I kind of got lost a little bit was just I started letting the pain and the world kind of drive and win, over really resting in the truth. And I got lost for a little while, and just wasn't in a good place spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And I was in and out of the OR, and I was addicted to pain medication, and I was, should have been having a great time at college and competing, and I'm sleeping on the floor of my parents' bedroom because I need 24/7 care. And, it's just, life did not look how I wanted it to look, and I thought it should have looked. And it took me a while to kind of grasp that reality. And I finally got to a point, man, I hit rock bottom. I got tired of running. I got tired of looking to the world for the answers. I knew truth. I knew where hope was. I didn't know what the future was going to look like, but I knew that I needed to stop trying to figure out all of that on my own and let go a little bit and surrender. I think the hard part too for me is like just the uncertainty of the future is what kind of stopped me from like living in the present. And I think I got to a point where amputation became a really serious part of that conversation, and I saw amputation as hope in a really weird way. I didn't see it as this traumatic loss. I saw it in some capacity as like a second chance, maybe. Like complete surrender to let go, to like even be able to make the decision to have my leg amputated. But like there had to be a point for me, and it kind of happened all in about an 8-week window, where it was like this need for surrender, this understanding of need for surrender, understanding that I can't be in control, and then hearing that amputation is probably the deal. Was like, okay, like, do you trust me? Mm. Do you trust me enough to let go of your leg, the thing that you've idolized running for so long, thinking that that's all you have? And at this point, Paralympics isn't even on the radar. Right. I mean, I didn't even know what the Paralympics is. Mm-hmm. And, I think obviously that started kind of the journey that it was the moment of surrender that began the journey to where we are today.
Yeah. I think you've let it, James mentions it. Paul mentions it a lot, but perseverance and turning into character through trial. And I think you're that's a testament to the way you've responded. But what would you say the pivot was from a spiritual growth standpoint, what you were getting into in God's Word? I know we went to breakfast one time and you mentioned Job, and I was like, I'm not as versed in the Old Testament. I hadn't read through all of that, but since we've talked, definitely read more about that and learned more about that. What turned you to that? In that character, where do you see your own story, and where can you put yourself as you read something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard looking at a lot of stories, both Old and New Testament, or just life stories in general, because we always want to put ourselves as the hero. Think about like when we watch a movie, like we like to visualize ourselves as the hero of the story. And there's a lot of things happening in Job. There's a lot of characters going on. There's a lot of emotion and experience, and the loss that's there. The people that are supposed to have your back are kind of like, what are you doing type thing. And I feel like every time I read or go through that, it's I catch myself wanting to be the strong character that is enduring. And I more often, if I'm being honest, find myself more as the unsteady, fearful one. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say anything particularly just like drew me to that, but I think I've, especially in that time of rediscovery, had to really start asking the hard questions, because I was avoiding them for a long time, right? I mean, I was hiding, and I was not being honest and real and transparent and vulnerable. And I think as I began to surrender and let go, and I started coming through the fire, the refining process, if you will, I started to realize, like, hey, it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to hurt, and how's God using you there? What's God teaching you there? And you go through Job and you watch the roller coaster that he goes through of just like ultimate provision, ultimate loss, promise, not really sure, redemption. I mean, it's crazy. And I in pairing with that, I think I love Psalms, because David is so real and genuine. Like, you'll like read one Psalm and it's like, praise the Lord, you're the best person. And he's like, dude, I am like traumatized right now. And you are, like, this is the worst. Protect me from my enemies, like, and I think there's so much beauty in that. Especially in our culture right now, man. I mean, like we just put our best part of ourselves out there for people, right? Mm. We don't actually invite them into the mess. And I think, again, you're speaking to myself here, even right now, I'm worse at this than good at it, I would say. But understanding that, the refining process is always there, right? We're broken, we're sinful people, and it's why Jesus had to come, right? That was part of the beautiful plan, right? The fulfillment of the ultimate covenant. But it's okay. Like, we've been redeemed, and so instead of seeing our brokenness as a crutch, like seeing it as how God is using this moment to teach us and to equip us more for His kingdom.
Yeah. I think with the Job and the Psalms examples, the fact that's in God's Word, I mean, I think that shows a lot about His character, in the sense that Tim Keller's got a good piece on Job and suffering. Mm. And it talks about Job's saying all these awful things to God. And then Job's friends are like, God, aren't you going to reprimand him for, are you listening to the things he's saying? And God basically in turn says that those are prayers, he's talking to me. And so, same thing with Psalms. And you talked about the pivot of typically there's the crying out and then there's the pivot saying, God, you're good. It's a wrap. There are a couple Psalms though that just, Psalm 88 comes to mind. It literally ends like, darkness is my closest friend.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like that's the posture of the Psalm. And the fact that that is in God's word, it is in God's word, tells us that it's okay to, he wants to hear from us when we're hurt. It's kind of like, I mean, it's not that we want to get, how do I put this? As your kids, ask you for something, or like if they had a bad day, you still want to hear about their day. You might still say, we'll stop complaining about this or that. You might kind of like redirect them a little bit, but you want to hear what's on their heart and it's no different with our Heavenly Father. Like those are good prayers, and they're deep. And I think there sometimes, Romans 8 talks about the Holy Spirit interceding in times when where groans are the only thing we can muster. Yeah. And that's something that I know you can go back to that place, and I can go back to that place within the last 24 hours. Yeah, man. And so it's a constant cycle to where we're renewing ourselves, but still, if we're still looking to Him for that provision and that comfort and that guidance, I guess that's where He wants us. I think going through some of the things that I've gone through from a health journey standpoint, it's like you're crying out for God's will and His sovereignty. Like, hey, is this your plan for my life? But ultimately, like Jesus was pretty clear with His disciples, like, keep your eyes on me and focus on, like, abide in me. That was His direction. Like, no matter what happens, are you still growing closer to me? Like, that ultimately we get wrapped up in, like, hey, is this job that your will for me, or is this or that your will for my life? I think that paralyzes us a lot. But when in turn, like, His will is for us to grow closer to Him, no matter what. Doesn't matter what town you're in. Doesn't matter what your profession. I think we want so much to have our own, what we defined as purpose and what we defined as our thing. But I think a lot of things that we care about, God might, at the end of the day, might not care as much about some of those things. Like, did you love my people? Did you act, did you grow closer to me? Essentially, did you keep your eyes on Christ? So that's, I found myself, if there's one takeaway, like, that's what I, at the end of the day, trying to focus on, in the sense of when things are too hard, or, so hard that, is that still my focus? You know what I mean?
No, dude, that's so good. Yeah, I'd love to, I was thinking about, gosh, it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even now, we grabbed breakfast and kind of gave me just an update on some stuff that was going on. And I guess at that time it was kind of thinking it was one diagnosis, and talked with Leah. We had you come out of the house to try some treatment stuff. Like, we were just, kind of really still in the, investigatory phase. Give me an update on kind of the past couple of years. And
man, we I'm thinking back to that time too.
Mama's boy, baby.
Yeah. Which we've tried to go back several times, and it's always packed. It's always just line out the door. So we go somewhere else.
Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. It's wide open, baby.
Well, Mobley's in school, so that's probably why we keep striking out. But yeah, man. I mean, it's so interesting, because in a lot of people's mind, this came out of the blue, and as far as my health journey, people that maybe I haven't seen in a while, like, that this just completely was out of the blue. And in some cases it was, but this was a slow drip, in the sense of the symptoms I was experiencing for years. Hindsight 2020 makes sense now, looking back, that I was having some symptoms that were leading to this deterioration of my nervous system. Yeah, man, it was. I was I'm trying to think how to put this, because I was basically misdiagnosed for a year and a half. Misdiagnosed. They were calling what I was experiencing benign, in the sense of I was searching for answers for a year and a half before we actually heard motor neuron disease. And it's not that you're in a rush to get diagnosed with this anyway, but it's something that we knew, we were well aware that I was losing my footing as far as my health goes. It started with twitching, and it started with episodes of twitching, mainly in my biceps and later my chest and across my quads, really all over my body, muscle twitching. But we knew in August of 2019 when we had Shelby, our second daughter, is when we know it never stopped from that point on. That was just a clear defining earmark in time where we can remember where it didn't stop. And so we started, I met with my PCP, and he didn't think it was normal by any means. So he directed me to a neurologist and started the investigation, I guess, starting there to where I was going through nerve studies, and everything was checking out on that end, though. That was what was so interesting, is I was really hearing what was benign, and later they kind of changed the tagline to cramp fasciculation syndrome. And so we had this label, this thing that we were pointing to, that's saying, okay, that's what it is. That's what all this fatigue I'm experiencing. I'm laying down on the floor when I come home from work, and Molly's pressing on my back. I'm having muscle spasms, cramping like crazy, can't sleep. Mm-hmm. So I'm experiencing all that stuff, but we're pointing towards this label that we had experienced. But I really pushed back, and I've kind of gotten into it with a few doctors about that specific diagnosis, because there's nothing benign about what I was experiencing. Your body does not just uncontrollably twitch, mindlessly twitch. Yeah. It was obviously telling us something that there's alarm bells, sirens, going off in my body, saying there was something wrong. But we kept pressing in, because we knew, I knew in my gut that there was something was off. So probably had 4 or 5 EMGs, and until we heard motor neuron disease. But I guess when it got cold in 2020, so maybe October, started having weakness in my hands, and that's just general weakness, like trying to open something simple for the kids. Your kids come up with a snack or something, and you're like, man, I can't get this open, like something just craziness, just like couldn't believe it. And it's like, man, are my hands cold? I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. Can't open a Dasani, just like a general water bottle. I remember struggling to put them in the car seats, and we were at Herman C. Michael Field, Herman C. out there. That's the OG.
Stomping grounds, baby.
It's one of the OG Watkinsville staples. But I remember getting out there, and I'm not in Jarryd Wallace shape, but I could do a few pull-ups. I could rock out 20, 25 pull-ups if I needed to, and I got it with them, was out there on the monkey bars. I was like, I'm just going to see if I can do some pull-ups. Couldn't budge. Wow. And I was like, what is going on? Because to that point, I had stopped working out, and it was just this just cascading of symptoms. But you're just trying to live. You're like, man, am I aging? Is this like...
Is this what it's like to be 30?
At that point, I'm like 34, 35. I'm like, man, am I just like getting old or what? And I mean, you've got 2 young girls at home too, and you're thinking some of the sleep might be attributed to that. But I've never had a problem sleeping, bro. I could sleep through a hurricane. And we see that with Abby now. She's the best sleeper in the house, man. She's out 2 minutes. She's out.
Come on.
So for me to struggle with sleep was a big deal. And I never thought I would need like medication to like calm my nerves just enough to sleep. But that's where I was. So I was really losing some ground there. And man, when we knew something was off, and I think I wasn't due back to have another EMG until February of 2021. But I think I would have probably had the same conversation with the doctor had I had an EMG maybe October 2020, because we were starting to see the physical manifestations of the symptoms I was finding, of the symptoms I had experienced to that point. But again, that benign fasciculation syndrome was the diagnosis, and we were pointing everything towards that. Like, hey, it might get better in 2 years. It might get better in 5 years. It might never get better, but this isn't anything to be concerned about. So it's just kind of push through and figure it out. And that's what we were doing all through COVID. All through that, I was deteriorating, but not in a way that was keeping me from living normal life. And then you hear motor neuron disease in 2021, the doctor said in that appointment, well, I'll backtrack a little bit because this is a pivotal part for me and Mops. We're in the room, and he's taking me through an EMG, which that's where they stick a needle into your nerves and essentially measure the response. They send electrical signals through your nerves, and he was pretty aggressive with it because you could tell he was searching, really, because he could see my hands, and I could sense the gravity of the room and of what he was doing, and it's almost like it was affirming what he kind of thought on the Zoom calls that we had during COVID.
Right.
So I was already, my mind was already kind of there in the moment, like understanding that this is no bueno.
Yeah.
So he runs me through that, but he stepped out of the room to go look at, he had 2 residents in the room with him. He stepped out to go look at that. And Mobley showed me something she was grading. It was they had gone through a lesson on the civil rights, and at the bottom, one of the students had written, Joshua 1:9, the Lord your God goes before you. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do not be dismayed, because the Lord your God goes before you. And they had written it very clearly at the bottom of the page, and it was just going back to that moment. We just, I don't know, that was just very clear to look back on that, knowing that we were about to set out on a journey that we didn't choose, but that was set before us.
Wow.
But he had gone before us, and we were trusting from that appointment on. And so the doctor comes back in the room, and he said, well, I know you have a motor neuron disease. I'm just not sure which one. And that's where he laid out spinal muscular atrophy, Kennedy's disease, and then ALS being the third one that he mentioned, last thing standing. And so it's process of elimination with that. It's a clinical diagnosis.
Right.
So until I had some physical signs to point to, whether it's muscle weakness or wasting, atrophy. Yeah. And I know you mentioned how you were describing your leg and losing muscle with your leg. I'm familiar because I would have what's called limb onset. Yeah. And so it happened, it's progressing through my arms and feet and through my, outside in, if that makes sense. And you could have inside out. You could have, obviously if you had to pick one, you'd pick the limb onset because it's a slower progression typically, but every case is just so different. Wow. And so it's hard, they can't really tell you the root cause. And that's where it's just so hard to accept. And so even from that point on, when we went to breakfast was after post-diagnosis of that. Yeah. But I was really, in my mind, a trial treatment of trying to figure out something else we could point towards. I was going, if they couldn't help me on the MD side, I'm going to go functional, integrative, homeopathic, and see if there's anything else we could point to. So that's what we did, and really spent a year and a half really searching and trying to figure out if there was something else in play. A lot of blood tests, a lot of different strategies, no breakthroughs on that time that we spent in that year and a half. And so when I went back to clinic, it was because I needed the resources of clinic. So it's very clear when we go to clinic, there's some helpful people that are involved in that world, but it's very clear that it's maintenance based, that they take you through the test, but they're essentially charting the decline of your symptoms and giving you all the resources you need to, but from the pathology standpoint, they're really not getting in any further into the treatment. There's only 3, now 2. One just got taken off the shelf from the, I guess the CDC or FDA. That there's only 2 medications that are approved for it. So, and even those, the data is very mixed reviews on whether it even helps at all. So,
I remember, when we had breakfast and we were talking, there was so much optimism, and really kind of saying coming out of that initial kind of diagnosis, but hey, like we're going on this holistic route, homeopathic. My wife does integrated nutrition, so we had some conversations around that, red light treatment, a lot of things that we were discussing, and obviously went on that year and a half journey. Talk through a little bit of that, I guess that maybe the time in between that year and a half journey and then going back to clinical, and what you learned during that time, how valuable that time maybe was for you. Then maybe the transition, both, emotionally and mentally, kind of going back into clinical.
From a medical standpoint, that side really opened up my eyes to, you're taking a comprehensive look at the body, right? Like everybody we met with really looked at, granted, what was happening to my nervous system was the byproduct of something else tripping my body to, for instance, you go to a cardiologist and they look at the heart. Well, if you've got some other level that's affecting the heart, integrative and functional medicine does a good job of looking at the organism, not just the organ. Does that make sense? Like not just, so I think there's a lot to be said about that world, and the way, it made sense the way they would run me through the tests, and it made sense the questions they were asking and the levels that they were measuring. It all made sense. Granted, there was no breakthrough, but I think, if there's someone out there going through some mysterious symptoms, I would go that route and try to figure out if there's something that's affecting what you're experiencing. If there's something else that's off, that's tripping the wires and manifesting in some other way. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So I think there's a lot to be said for that. I wish there was a good blend of that world and the Western medicine world. Because we do a good job. Like if you're from trauma medicine or really specific surgeries and great doctors, nothing's discounting. I mean, I'm not throwing anything, I'm not throwing shade on any side of medicine. I'm just saying that we do a really good job at certain things in this country, but looking at the comprehensive look at the whole body. And I think Leah, she does a good job with that, with nutrition and how that affects things. But when was the last time your doctor asked you what you're eating? Typically, they're not asking those questions. Like, here's some meds that help with this symptom. When I was having trouble sleeping, it was things to numb the effects of the twitching I was experiencing. It was a very symptomatic approach to you know what I mean? If you're having anxiety, like, why are you having anxiety? Does that make sense? Instead of just giving you anxiety medication, let's look at the triggers. It's like
what's bringing you there.
So I learned a lot, and I feel like I read a lot of case studies. I mean, you have to become your own advocate and your own and my wife, my mom, my mother-in-law, a lot of my family members started digging in with me, and still to this day send me articles. And I feel like for a long time there, when you're searching for hope, hope can be powerful in its own right. I think during that year and a half, even though there was no physical breakthroughs, still the fact that we had hope, and our hope's not built on what I'm experiencing. I'll just say from a biblical standpoint, our hope is ultimately in Him and what He's already done. But from a health journey standpoint, the hope is still a powerful component of even how your mind responds. Your body responds to your mind and where your mind's at.
100%.
I think there's something to that. And even our guy, Mike Dew, I'm going through PT with him. And a lot of times he said, hey, if it's some sort of rehab component, like cryotherapy or, maybe as you as a former athlete, if there's something that you think helps, it does help. That's part of it. So it's not just placebo effect of these things. Like, do they work? Hyperbarics. I experienced a lot of time with hyperbarics and red light and those things. And I think they did provide some short-term satisfaction, but not ultimately the breakthrough I was looking for. But I learned a ton. Yeah. And so you can't regret going this way or that, or from a financial standpoint, the commitment to pursuing that. We still feel very called to pursue anything that's out there that could give us a shot, because if they can't tell me what caused it, with all due respect, like, if you're not going to give me an answer, I'm going to try my best to find some answers myself. And there are case studies of miraculous comebacks with what I'm dealing with, and they don't know what turned it. And there's a organization at Duke University called ALS Untangled, and they delve into maybe 60 50 or 60 turnarounds of cases. They didn't potentially, they didn't 100% go from where I'm sitting to a full-fledged running a marathon, but they went from wheelchair to walker, or they went from walker to unassisted. And that creates hope in a sense of just potentially you could be one of those case studies. That's not the norm. I'm not trying to hear some sugar-coated response from a doctor saying that's what we typically see, because I'm a bit well aware that that's not what we typically see. But I'm still make those cases should be brought up, in my opinion, in every diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because it's just important. I don't care if it's one person, if they categorically, clinically had what you're saying they had and they don't anymore. Well, how is that? Because you're telling me that what's happening to my motor neurons can't regenerate. How has it happened before? It's a huge disconnect to me between the actual diagnosis. Because I think if I would have just shut down in that diagnosis in February of 21, I think my body would follow that. Does that make sense? I think
for sure.
I mean, again, every case is so different, but you can't say, I don't know. I just know that because I know if I don't get up, if I don't stretch, if I don't go PT with Dew, I know my body wants to cramp up, wants to curl up, like my hands, for instance. Like if I wouldn't do anything, my hands would be balled up, like clenched up, like really rigid and stiff. And I'm still able to feel everything. Like I feel hot, cold, pricks. I still have an ACL. I can technically tear my ACL, but I just can't move the muscles that require me to tear my ACL. Does that make sense? So I still feel like right now, like I want to get up and stretch. Like I just want to get up and stretch. So I'm telling my arm to do a curl, and it doesn't want to do it. I mean, it won't do it. I can compensate, and I still have some function my shoulder.
Yep.
So I can bring it up.
Yep.
But you essentially become trapped in your body, and you're not able to move. Your muscles aren't responding. Your brain's telling your hand to make a fist, but there's just a disconnect there. So it's kind of like, you ever been to you've been to like St. Simon's or anywhere on the?
Oh yeah.
You ever been buried in the sand?
Oh yeah.
That's kind of what it's like.
It feels like.
Wow. Yeah, dude. Because you kind of move when you're starting to get, but then you start to pile it on, and it's like, whoa, dude, I can't move. I'm starting to panic almost. Wow. And so it's just there's still that desire though to stretch and to just move. It's like still that like hard desire.
Yeah.
And you get tired of sitting, so there's still that desire there to do that, and so while I'm losing function, I'm not losing sensation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mobley and kind of that pivotal moment in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
Oh man. Well, she's definitely got another gear that I didn't know existed, as far as like her fight and her like willingness to fight for our family and me. She's strong. Like I'm only $150 on my best day. I mean, I'm actually lighter than that now, but she helps me like get up out of this thing. Like,
wow.
And so it's kind of helped us, like at home, like the transitions and stuff, like we're leaning on that as opposed to a lift or something. There might be a time where we, I'm not going to say that. I mean, we're just kind of taking it day by day, but she's strong, like physically and spiritually and emotionally, the way she's, because, it is like life doesn't stop. I'm still chasing around a 6 and a 4-year-old, and everything else about what's chaotic about life. Like I mentioned Shelby earlier before we started, like she just started soccer practice, and we got one driver in the family now, you know what I mean? And that's not to say people wouldn't try to carpool, but we want to be there. We want to be at the practices. And,
totally.
Me yelling at her, coaching her, helping her. But we got one driver, and we got, one person that's going to prepare supper, and I'm gonna be there, and I'm really taking on a coach mentality, like it or not. In our house, I'm very vocal. I mean, I'm just thankful that God's kept my vocal ability to encourage, and also, I mean, there's times where that's a negative too. You probably wish I would shut up, but I'm talking a lot in our family because I'm getting the girls up and I'm right on their tails. I can't like physically interject myself like I want to, like I would want to do for Mobley too, from the standpoint of what I would help her, assist her to do, or just pick the girls up and get out of the house for 2 hours and like let her have her space, or go do yoga or go to the coffee shop or whatever. I'm able to watch the girls, like, hey, let's watch a movie or something, and she can get out of the house. Like that's, and we do that. But from a physical standpoint, I feel like, especially as males, we're called to show up physically and serve. So it's just not the way I would want it, or, way she would want it either. So there's still that grief cycle of what we are, experiencing daily. But like, she's been a warrior, man. And that's not a common term for, I don't know. It's, I don't know. She's just got another gear that didn't know, a depth there that it's not that I didn't know it was there. I'm just, I guess, thankful that she's got that, Yeah. But life, just the chaos of normal life is still very much intact. Like, this is just another layer of what we're experiencing right now. Yeah. But we're thankful for each other. We're real like close. We're pretty close, man. Like, our family's like a little unit. And like, there's a lot of jokes we make about that, about like it or love it, but like we're at Disney, like we're like all there, in the restroom. Like, it's like it's like we're all just figuring it out, man. It's like, it's just,
I love it.
It's that's probably TMI, but it's just man, it's just,
that's life, bro.
Dude, it's raw. It's been something. I say that, but I mean, I think our girls too, it's like, when we got into this, I was worried about them seeing me in some vulnerable situations, and nobody would want them to see their dad in that. But I've tried to look at it like God's doing something in their hearts and in their testimony that I got no control over either. So ultimately, trusting him with that,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Disney?
Oh yeah. Oh man, we went twice in 1 year, so we're kind of Disney nuts. But
you got the Disney passes, the whole thing.
I feel like we really figured it out because I get the DAS pass, which is like the disability. Yeah. I don't even like saying it, but then again, you get down there and there's people that haven't. Like, I'm like looking over. You probably experienced this all the time. I'm like, dude, you do not need this, and I need it. As like, but we knew how to use it. We figured out how to use it. Like, well, we had the lightning plant pass, and we had the DAS thing.
Great. And
so we were just like, we'd do the DAS, and then we'd book a lightning lane, and we would be able to jump and we crushed it. We were just checking so many boxes, and when we went back, we're really fortunate around work. Lawrence Smith really spearheaded this, but he's got the Athens chapter of the National Football Foundation. Yeah. Really was the major push to getting us back that second time, and Coach Smart helped tremendously getting us down there with a plane, and so we had some details where we really were spoiled. We were really spoiled, and so that's the best thing I can say is like people went to bat for us and helped us, but Mobley and I were just laughing because not telling our girls like if we go back, it might not be the same. It's like the
standard has been set.
We stayed at Grand Floridian. It was cool. Like we did it right. It's like awesome. It was great, but Disney's probably wouldn't be. We like to travel and we like to do things as a family, but that probably wouldn't be my. you got to go when your kids are the right age. You got to do it. I know it's expensive. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
But that probably wouldn't be where I'd like say, let's go back time and time again, a bunch. But it's a good place for us because of the accessibility.
Totally.
I mean, it takes the guesswork out of it for us. So I'm sure we'll go back at some point. We're not in a rush just yet. We want to do some other things, but it's a good fit for what we've got going on because I don't feel like I can chill. I mean, I like doing some of the stuff, but they're having a blast and I can help us with lines and stuff and like order this food on the app. And I'm kind of like, well, I mentioned the value
You're the
I'm
head
able
coach,
to
man.
Yeah, I mentioned the value I'm able to add to the family now is not the physical, but I'm like wheeling and dealing on the app, and I'm like one step ahead. I'm like helping, I'm kind of so I enjoy that, and that's kind of the day to day. I think strength for me right now is just trying to, be the like Houston, like be the kind of quarterback it from the operational side and help us execute. But man, I mean, I miss driving a lot, and just something about like putting your kids in the car and like your whole family in the car and just going. Yeah. And so I know I drive mildly crazy, like because I'm sitting in the middle of the car and like I can see everything, bro. It's like she's driving, but it's like I can see everything because you can see out the sides and like I'm already
your blind spots.
I'm already what do you call it? Like a cockpit quarterback or a
backseat driver.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's it's bad. It's bad. I know it is, and I can't even help it because it's just there's a big tension there, and there's like most of our disagreements and arguments stem from like.
I'm glad that's not just me, man.
I think it's everybody, but it's even more so now. So, yeah, she's good. I don't want to throw her under the bus. She's not here to defend herself. She's good. She's good. I know I know that about myself. I'm working on it. Yeah. But I'm just trying to be like a vocal presence, encouragement, and
that's awesome.
And I'm physical where I can be. Like the girls climb up in my lap and we just go, man. I've put 700 miles on this thing. I don't know if that's an official record, but my wheelchair guy was like, yeah, that's a lot.
you humming.
And he's fixed this thing like a ton because I'm grinding on this thing.
Good for you.
So we're really maxing out what we can do, and
you talked about
I'm probably not able to like physically like reprimand the girls like I want to though, that's probably a thing too. Yeah. I'm not able to like like that's a negative, I think, but because a lot of the pent up frustration where I would like snatch them up and remove them from a situation, and it's like comes out as a frustration tone. That makes sense. And so I'm like probably yelling more than maybe not yelling, but just like an aggressive tone in the sense because you're not able to like physically do what you want. So there's a struggle.
Yeah, that makes sense. You talked about just Mobley's second gear. Yeah. What do you think you've learned about yourself that maybe you wouldn't have, barring the circumstance?
Mm. Man. That's a good question, man. I think I'm still learning a lot of that. I mean, I think like from a spiritual standpoint, I think before this, I read my Bible, not as much as I probably should have. But now, then when you go through something like this, it's literally, it's not whether I need to get in my word. I need to get in the word today. It's like, no, that's like that's a necessary component to like life right now for me. So from a spiritual standpoint, I'm being fed because I need that. I have to have that. It's not whether or not like, I feel convicted, like I need to open my Bible more. It's not like that. It's like literally daily bread. It's literally so spending time in the Word and just I guess in my personal walk is very necessary in like bringing my mind and my physical nature, whatever that is. It's, it's not what it was even 6 months ago or a year ago, but it's still bringing that back to center. I couldn't do that without spending time in the Word and spending time in prayer. So I think my prayer life and my walk, it's something that it's a necessary in my rhythm right now. Because I always feel like, especially in college, you know how I got, you'd be like, oh, I feel like I need to go back to church, or I need to spend time in the Word. Like, you'd always say that, but
Totally.
like God's brought me to a point to where it's a need. It's I've got to have that. I can't do it. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't. So I think everybody's going to experience some adversity, but this is a constant state of adversity. Yeah. It's a constant, like it's going to be waiting for me if I wake up, and when we wake up in the morning, it's constantly there. And you deal with the reality of it every day.
Yeah. So
it's just, it's not that I have, it's very, like what I experienced, it's not a big swing between good days and bad days. It kind of just is like, does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like tomorrow I wake up and it just, oh, I had a good day today. It's just, it's like, it is what it is right now. Yeah. And if anything, you have these monthly check marks to where you realize, oh, I could do this last month or 2 months ago, and starting to have issues like bringing my arm all the way up to my face to like scratch my face, and I can still like bring it around and like get it up there with my chair. But you're in this constant state of adaptation. You're adapting the way you do things, and then you're losing ground on how you did it last. Yeah. So it's this constant. So that's the adversity. You see how, to your point, like in your situation, the sense of losing a limb, of how adaptable you are, or you see somebody that's lost both their limbs and how strong and how much they're able to do with their upper body. And I mean, I've had tons of conversations with God about like, hey, if I could just trade, one group and keep the other, or if you just stop it and just be like this. But the reality of it is this constant state of trying to adapt is still important to me, and trying to do as much as I can, as long as I can. And that's really important. I think I struggle with that through this whole journey, because there was times where a walker probably would have really helped me for 6 months. It's not that I think stubborn is the wrong word, but I was always afraid of going to the walker, because I knew if I went to the walker, I was afraid that I would never get off the walker, which that's true. But I think I was delayed in my, like I didn't get in the wheelchair until I absolutely had to, you know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't go to the walker until I absolutely had to. I didn't get AFOs, like prosthetic leg things but they really would have really helped me, 6 months before that, because I was having foot drop and tripping. So, I mean, there was a little bit of, I think, a healthy level of just stubbornness, but then you're realizing that your body's, it's not a willpower thing with what I'm dealing with. It's not, I think, y'all can understand this as an athlete, but you always have that one more rep mentality of like, I can do one more. Yeah, totally. But the humbling factor of what I'm dealing with is your body literally just won't do it. Like if I always use the analogy, like if I had to take a step, or if I was like in a cul-de-sac and you had to get up the curb to save your life, and you had to toss the walker out, like when I was in the walker state, and like, okay, now you've got to step up that curb and you can have it all back. I couldn't do it. Like just, even if you muster up everything you got, it's like literally once you reach that point, it's literally not doing it anymore. And that's what's such a mental obstacle or challenge, I guess, for this daily. It's just the mental factor, because your mind's as sharp as ever. If not, I mean, it's not to say you gain in that. Maybe you do, because you're forced to meditate, to pray, you're kind of trapped in your body. You're not able to just blow off some steam and go for a run or go for a drive, or you don't have the quick escape, the fight or flight, just quicker escape that you would have if you had a fully functioning body. So in a way you become this, just a little bit stronger mentally, I think, in the sense of what you're able to tolerate. Because even going through, as it started to chip away at my health and I started twitching, I think God was kind of peeling back some of the layers of making me more dependent on him and sending me to his word, because I was losing ground, I mean, physically, for a long time before this was actually what I'm dealing with now.
Yeah.
And I think that he was doing that in a way to work on my character,
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are going to listen to this, may not have that radical loss of something, right?
Yeah.
Adversity. But I think there's so much to be learned from kind of what you're saying right now, as far as just the forced stillness in time with the Lord and prayer. What advice maybe, or like encouragement would you have? It sounds like in some capacity that's becoming your superpower, and resting there and growing there and gaining wisdom and discernment there. It's hard when life is busy, and your life is just as busy, if not busier than everyone. How has prioritizing that affected you positively, and what encouragement would you want to kind of pay it forward to just say this really has become a non-negotiable?
Yeah, man, I would just say trusting and surrendering is not something that's, I think, natural. Like we're very much like I got it creatures. Like we want to control as much as we can, and my lack of control now, like of things that I do control, is something that's beyond my control, And so the trust factor of trusting that he's still ultimately sovereign and ultimately still able to bring good out of this, that he's still doing a work in me, that just trusting that his plans, like I used to not, this might resonate with you, because I was telling somebody I talked to regularly that I was struggling with Jeremiah 29. Like, do I believe that about myself? Like, plans for prospering you, not to harm you, to bring you a future, hope. Yeah. I was like, do I believe that? Like, is that true? Is that true for me? Do I believe in that? And I've wrestled with that. But ultimately it's like he's painting on a canvas that's much wider than I can see. You know what I mean? I mentioned like my girls, even like this might, me saying yes to God, like in this dire need situation, could affect them. It could affect a lot of different, like just saying like yes to his plan and his sovereignty, like his will be done. I think Jesus modeled that for us in the garden before he was crucified too. He's saying that if there's any other way, please take this cup from me, but nevertheless your will be done. So that's not something that's natural. It's for Jesus to have to go through that emotion. He modeled that for us, but that's not something that's easily done, to say your will be done when it's like too. This. Yeah. What's that?
He was sweating blood.
Yeah.
Pain.
Well, even after that, I think Peter was like, basically like, Jesus was like, I don't know if you're ready. Like, what was it? Peter was like saying that he wants to, like, he's ready to suffer.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jesus was like, I don't think you want this smoke. Like, you're not ready. Yeah. Like, you're not, like, you're going to deny me 3 times.
Right.
I should know that better than I do. I probably just butchered it. But
no, you're wrong.
But no, man, I think that's not something that I feel like I've got that figured out, but trying to understand that what's been modeled for us and trying to do that myself, I think that's where my the daily wrestling with all this is, of just trying to say your will be done. And that's not coming natural. It's not something that's easy. But I think everybody can be faced with that to some extent, whether you have to go through what I'm going through or not. But people are going to, I talked to a guy last night that lost a sibling, man, and it just rocked his world. It's like can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
But for him to say like, "Your will be done," that's hard. That's hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's really natural for this world, but for hope of what's to come, I think that's the only way I can. The Bible's the only thing that can make any sense of it, I guess, of what he's saying is to come.
Right.
Our hope being in eternity. I think that's the only way that makes sense. It's the only way you can say yes, like your will be done even if it is not good for what it is. Not good for the here and now. So that would be advice, but also something that I'm actively like wrestling with myself. It's like a daily thing. It's not. I don't know if that will ever be easy, but yeah. So yeah. What about you? I mean, obviously that being just something that's a daily tension and something I'm wrestling with. How does that land with you, and how have you seen that as part of your story of ultimately just saying your will be done? I know I've seen him honor that with you, but why don't you share a little bit about that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, echo in the sense of, I wish I could be better at it. There's days that are harder than others to posture there, and I always tell people in some capacity, like, learn from my adversity. Don't you go wait till you suffer to make this choice, right? Like, because there's so much power and fruit here, and I'll live there for a little while, and then I'll get busy, or I'll make an excuse why not to, or I don't fight for that time in the capacity that should be fought for, and so I'm kind of just talking big stroke, globally speaking, like over the last 13 years, the things that I've been through, the trauma I've experienced in some way, shape, or form, and it is amazing how moments of adversity do draw you to your knees, but God is always there, and he desires relationship. He desires constant intimacy with his people, and he created us for relationship, right? And so I mean, I have seen in so many different layers and ways in my walk where maybe through circumstances God's brought me to my knees, or there have been times where, man, things have been really great, and I have felt like I'm back in control, and things are rock and roll, and there's times where things are great, and I'm in this place of just ultimate surrender. And I will tell you, the beauty of the positioning of surrender is just this peace that transcends any understanding. God will work in spite of our brokenness at times, but the untangible that comes with posturing in front of the Lord consistently is this peace that is unexplainable. And I look back through, his constant provision and faithfulness, even when it didn't feel like it, even when it hurt, even when it was hard, even when things didn't make sense. And the moments where I was intentionally seeking him, it didn't make things better all the time. It didn't solve the problems all the time. Stuff still hurt. Reality was still there, but there was a peace that I just cannot explain. And that's the promise, right? The promise isn't to take away the pain. The promise isn't to make your life amazing. The promise isn't everything's going to be, rainbows and roses. The promise is that if you pursue me, then I will give you a peace, and my will be done, not your will. And man, I find myself really, really fired up about Jarryd's will getting done in life sometimes, even knowing truth, right? Even pursuing the Father. I'll get into the middle of a day and I'm just like really trying to get this thing to the finish line, and it's like, bro, you realize like when you step back and you let go, that's when things really start happening, even if it doesn't look the way you want it to. Oh, and by the way, like the stress or the anxiety or the, irritableness that you feel goes away because I'm bringing you peace, because you've surrendered, because you're trusting me, because you're letting go. So, man, just to add on to what you say, like there's so much power in spending time with the Father in prayer and spending time with the Word, and a lot of it is not necessarily this. I want to say it. There's an unexplainable amount of peace that comes in that positioning, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the day, regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think the world doesn't put much premium on faithfulness, like the quality of being faithful.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't reward faithfulness, like heaven does, like God does, And I think being faithful, being a faithful servant, I think that's what we're called to do each day, like dying to ourselves and being faithful.
Man,
like I think that's discipline in what you're doing, training too. I mean, there's a lot of different nuances to that whole concept, but
totally,
like us, like our lives, like being faithful requires that each day for us to say, "Your will be done, not mine."
I'll tell you this crazy story, and ride with me on the journey, because I'll land the plane here. But talking about how the world perceives things, and how oftentimes, even as believers, do we put ourselves in what the world's standards are as kind of our check mark or our bench point, versus just fully trusting, God, and what that provision may or may not look like. I was pretty quickly after I had my amputation and recovered, came across Paralympic track and field and the sport, and came across the world record list, and I was like, I'm going after this. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna break world record. I'm gonna be the fastest amputee ever. And 3 years later, we're at World Championships, and we're in the prelims of the 200-meter dash. Just trying to make the finals, execute a really good race, cross the finish line, slowed down about 10 meters before just to kind of save some energy for the finals the next day, and I ended up breaking the world record. And I was like shocked, because it was like totally, I was kind of like trying to save it for the next day, like knew I had it in me. And but I was like super stoked, because I was like, what? I just broke a world record. This is crazy. Like, this is kind of the,
so if you didn't
the
pull
big
up,
goal, even faster, right?
If you didn't pull up, it'd even be
come on. That's
lower.
For sure. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. And anyways, I'm like super hyped, and I, again, I'm kind of shell shocked a little bit, because it was just about making the finals. But I get to the media, and there's obviously, you finish the race, you go down the media line, you go through interview questions and all that stuff, and the British news was the first person I came up to, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, Jarryd, you just broke the world record, something no one's ever done before. Are you going to go faster tomorrow?" And I, I kind of was like, "Oh, yeah, and I hope so, we'll see. Like, the finals is important, blah, blah, blah." Well, I go home, or I go back to the hotel, and, kind of journaling and thinking through the race and getting ready for the next day. And just that question, "Are you going to go faster tomorrow?" just kind of kept hitting me. And I was like, man, that was kind of weird. Like, and then the Lord was just like, huge lesson. He was like, listen, he's like, the world's never going to be satisfied. He said, literally, you just did something no one's ever done before. And the very first question you were asked is, are you going to do more? Are you going to run faster? Are you going to be better? Are you going to do this? And it really had changed the trajectory of my perspective for my career, and really shifted my perspective of what success looks like. Because the world sets all these standards, but as soon as anything's met, the standard shifts. It moves. It's never stable. You never attain. You never fully achieve. You never, quote unquote, win, because then that's done. It's on to the next thing. And the world, what I learned about the world is everything is fleeting, but God is true and constant, and salvation in Jesus is everlasting. And it really has helped me throughout my career as an athlete really be able to, I would say, not be as affected when I lose or when I didn't perform in the capacity I wanted to, and equally when I went on and broke the world record the next day and other times in my career, and really just understood that, hey, like, I'm not going to put this on a pedestal, although the world would say do that. And so, yeah, man, I think it was one of the most powerful lessons that I learned. And the reality is, the simple truth is that there's nothing in this world that can satisfy a soul that was created by a perfect creator. And the only thing that brings true joy, true peace, true satisfaction is having a personal relationship and knowing Jesus.
Man, that's good. That's a good thing to kind of wrap on. That's good. I'm glad you told that, because I do much better with tangible illustrations, being able to lock that away. And thanks for sharing.
Yeah, man.
And before I let you go, I got to hear y'all's Ninja Warrior story. So I wish Kat had a mic, but so she's from Tampa. So how did that? Was it down in Tampa or was it?
No, it was in Atlanta.
Okay.
This was also, it was Atlanta, and I found out that Kat was doing it like 2 days probably before, like, Josh Rucci, who was her strength coach while she was a gymnast at Georgia and trained me for 13 years. Was like, hey, I'm pretty sure like Kat's doing this too. And he took me over to the gym that he does some training at, and they had a warp wall. He's like, hey man, listen, like, if you make it to the end, like, you got to be able to run up that wall. Like, we gotta do this. So he helped me kind of learn how to run up the warp wall. And so we get to the event, and it's a very different environment than kind of a curated track meet that I'm kind of used to, where it's like everything's kind of sectioned. They just kind of have like a pin that they just throw all the athletes in. It's just a grass field, and they're like, hey, we'll call you when it's your turn. Here's some stuff to warm up with. Like, your call time's between 6 p.m. and 3 a.m., and it was just like, it was a crazy environment. But I think, did I go first, or I went before you, I think? So yeah, I was lucky. I got to run at 12:30 in the morning. Kat was on the back end and got to go to 4. The second obstacle took me out. Was that the same for you? It was a tough. The first one was kind of cool. You run over the little bouncing things over water, and you make it and you celebrate. You're super excited, and then it's like, okay, now here's the actual technical start. And there was this huge rod that was sticking out, and you have a ring that you swing on, and you unhook and hook it onto the other rod, and then you keep swinging. It, yeah. So it was a really technical deal, but I was like, you know what, I think I can do this. This will be all right. So I was like super hyped, like watching the people in front of me, and the person right before me overswung it and like hit the metal rod and like cut, like the course got shut down for like, you remember this, got shut down for like an hour. So that's just why you went at 4 a.m. And so literally like bleeding, like emergency, whole deal. They had to clean the pool. It was a whole thing. Anyways, so now in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm not sending this thing. Like I'm not here to be a Ninja Warrior superhero. Like, I'm just trying to have fun and stay, like, I got to stay healthy. So went off and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but I didn't send it as much as I needed to, and ate water pretty quickly. Yeah. But it was an amazing experience, and unfortunately I didn't get to see Kat go in person because I didn't stay till 4 a.m. to watch everybody. But yeah, it was a cool.
Growing
cool
up,
deal.
I used to always want to be on Guts. You remember Guts?
Oh yeah.
Guts? You're probably too young to remember Guts. So yeah, like you climbed the mountain,
Yep.
Aggro Crag.
Yep.
You know? Oh man, those are good times.
There's kind of like the floor is lava. If you make it to the end of the floor is lava, they've kind of reenacted that, where there's a slime thing that you have to climb up mountain. It's kind of interesting, but it's very similar.
It's great. I feel like you would have been perfect for Guts. You know.
Come on, man. I'm here for it. Bring it back, baby.
I'm Jarryd from Oconee County.
Do I have to talk like I'm from Oconee County too when I do it?
You don't, because your mom's Canadian. And
That's right.
Where's Jeff from?
Portland, Oregon.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't.
I've got zero Southern in me. I just have
non-regional diction. Could be a weatherman.
Yeah, dude.
Well, this was fun. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for having me over here.
Yeah, dude.
Thanks for opening up y'all's doors. This is a pretty nice facility.
Yeah. huge shout out to Loverly Gray.
Yeah. I know she's going to be really anxious about getting all of our followers, you know, so
that's right.
We're going to make sure we'll tag her.
We'll
and
make sure she gets that.
So she gets you know, notoriety for hosting, you know, because she really needs the pump, right?
Totally. Yeah, she's lacking in some followers right now, so we'll see if we can help her a little bit.
Yeah.
But hey, dude, no, thanks for having me. Obviously, I love being here and chatting with you. Thanks for opening up.
Well, the reason we're jumping back in is we have a very loyal fan base. Okay, it's not massive yet, you know what I'm saying? But it's like people have been listening week to week, and they've been asking me like, "What's the deal? Why are you not still doing it?" I'm like, man, it's a lot of work.
That's right.
It's a lot of work.
But we're here for the people.
Yeah. And Daniel, my brother-in-law, is working right now. Somebody's got to pay the bills, right?
That's right.
So he's working. And then Liz, she works kind of behind the scenes and edits a lot. She does a great job. And so thanks a lot for your help, Kat. And we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thanks.